Millions of citizens across Syria take part in the global march for Syria. Syrians assert support for the comprehensive reform program, rejection of foreign intervention, and denunciation of the hostile campaign against them. And Maqdisi affirms Syria's keenness on rendering Kofi Annan's mission successful, provided that it goes in line with the Syrian unique condition. Good afternoon and welcome to News in English. Millions of Syrian citizens took part in the global march for Syria to reiterate their allegiance to the homeland and their adherence to their country, regardless of the pressures they are facing.
Massive influx of millions of Syrian citizens into the squares of towns and cities across Syrian governorates bears witness that the Syrian people have opted for national unity and stability away from foreign intervention and dictates. At the invitation of Syrian youths, the global march for Syria is staged throughout Syria since the early hours of the morning. In Damascus, the masses who gathered at the Umayyad Square shouted slogans that reflected the Syrian people's awareness of their responsibilities in the face of the conspiracy targeting the homeland, their unified stand behind their leadership, and their steadfastness in the face of the pressures and misleading campaigns targeting their security and stability. In Aleppo, the participants in the march, staged at Saadullah al-Jabiri Square, hoisted national flags and placards praising the sacrifices of the Syrian Arab people to safeguard the homeland security. In Al-Muhafaza Square in Latakia, the participants in the march called for discarding sedition and rejecting the instigation campaigns led by certain misleading news media that are set on falsifying facts and fabricating lies to spread chaos and deal a blow to Syria's security. In Al-Cornish al-Bahri in Tartus, citizens expressed rejection of foreign intervention in the Syrian people's internal affairs. In Sabah Bahrat Square in Deir ez-Zor, the masses denounced the acts of killing civilians and law enforcement troops and sabotaging public and private properties in service of foreign agendas. In Al-Riqa and Al-Hasaka, the participants in the march voiced support for the comprehensive reform program led by President Bashar al-Assad. In Homs, citizens gathered in Al-Zahra, Al-Nuzha, Al-Hadara and the Shairat neighborhoods to denounce the hostile campaign and conspiracy led by certain Arab sides against Syria. In Dar'a and Al-Qunaitra, the masses expressed their appreciation for the stance of Russia, China and the friendly states who stood on Syria's side in the face of the conspiracy targeting the country. They denounced the Arab League's irresponsible decisions, which turned into a tool to implement foreign agendas.
Foreign and Expatriates Ministry spokesman Dr. Jihad Maqdisi said the United Nations envoy Kofi Annan presented during his recent visit to Syria verbal proposals to exchange views on them, and the Syrian verbal response to those proposals was very objective and of an illustrative nature of the way the initial proposals are to be implemented. Addressing reporters of a number of news agencies at the ministry's headquarters, Maqdisi said Syria is committed to make Annan's mission a success, providing that it goes in line with the Syrian unique situation and that requires their international and regional efforts to be brought together, particularly those which are hindering the political solution and calling for arming Syrian groups. He indicated that what is taking place in some areas is a restoration of security, not a political solution, as the army is in a state of self-defense, indicating that the presence of armed groups on the ground has been documented in international reports and has become an undeniable truth. Regarding humanitarian aid, Maqdisi said that there is a Syrian humanitarian and political commitment to distribute humanitarian aid, indicating that Syria has agreed with the United Nations on a certain mechanism to evaluate and provide help in cooperation with the Syrian Arab Red Crescent and the International Committee of the Red Cross in coordination with the Syrian government in a way that preserves Syria's sovereignty.
في زعزعة استقرار سوريا.
The ministers of local administration, electricity and health were briefed on the damage and vandalism caused by the armed terrorist groups to the infrastructure and public utilities of Baba Amr neighborhood in Homs City. The Minister of Local Administration, Omar Ghalawinji, said that a number of workshops would start working to rehabilitate the public services in Baba Amr and other neighborhoods in the city, pointing out that the damage is estimated at 2 billion Syrian pounds. In turn, Minister of Electricity Imad Khamis said that the ministry would start preparing the electricity stations, pointing out that the losses inflicted on the electricity sector in Baba Amr are estimated between 700 million to 1 billion Syrian pounds. Minister of Health Dr. Wael Halaqi, for his part, said that the clinical center in Baba Amr was completely destroyed by the armed groups, which used it as a base to launch terrorist acts. Security forces clashed with a terrorist group in Al-Qara caves near Al-Zawiya mountain, killing a number of terrorists and confiscating their weapons. Security forces also clashed with a terrorist group in Al-Nsaybin in Ariha, killing 3 of them. Various kinds of weapons and communication devices were seized. A terrorist was arrested in addition to 2 cars loaded with explosive devices that were planted on the road linking Ariha and Saraqib. Authorities clashed with armed terrorist groups near Al-Daf Bridge west of Al-Qasir in Homs suburbs, killing and injuring a number of terrorists. They also confiscated weapons which included RPG missiles, machine guns, rifles, Israeli-made bombs and large quantities of explosive devices. An officer and 5 law enforcement personnel were wounded during the confrontation. The Lebanese Al-Akhbar newspaper published a security report issued by the American Institute for War Studies, which reveals that 33 armed groups operate in Syria.
33 armed groups are operating in Syria, according to the third security report issued by the American Institute for War Studies, in which military analyst Joseph Holliday, who worked for the American intelligence services during the year 2006, said that the so-called Syrian Free Army operates like an umbrella and not as a traditional military establishment. He stressed that 3 brigades, namely Khalid ibn al-Walid Battalion in Homs, Harmoush Battalion in Jabal al-Zawiya, and Al-Umari Battalion in Daraa, work under the same supervision. The report pointed out that the biggest and more capable groups have nothing to do with the so-called Syrian Free Army in Turkey. For his part, journalist Nir Rosin, who spent 4 months in Syria, said in a report published in the Foreign Policy magazine that those involved in the Syrian armed rebellion constitute a more complex entity because they are prone to internal division, which makes them more inclined to extremism. He highlighted the negative role played by some misleading TV channels in helping the Islamic extremists dominate the Arab political scene through hosting them day and night on their screens. Holliday's view is shared by the political analyst working for the American Stratfor Company for Intelligence Services, Karaman Bukhari, who said that Al-Qaeda is benefiting a lot from the continuing violence in Syria and the divided opposition, which makes it attract new militant members.
Algerian Foreign Minister Mourad Mdelsi has said his country's stand towards the Syrian crisis is based on the principle of non-intervention in other countries' affairs and respect for international law in this regard. In a televised interview with Russia Today TV channel, Mdelsi referred to the identical Algerian and Russian stands concerning the Syrian crisis. He pointed out that the Russian analysis is based on facts on the ground, which confirm that violence in Syria is multi-sided and the government is not its main cause. Mdelsi stressed the need to focus on reality on the ground, not necessarily as displayed on some TV channels. Medical assistance and medicines dispatched by the Islamic Republic of Iran have been received by the Syrian Arab Red Crescent Organization in support of the organization's humanitarian efforts. The assistance will be distributed by the organization's branches among the needy across Syrian governorates. The Syrian Red Crescent said this was the first shipment of medical assistance to be followed by others in upcoming days. It also praised the role of the Ministry of Health and civil society organizations in Syria for their support to the Syrian Red Crescent to ensure that the necessary medical and humanitarian assistance is delivered to those who need them. It also thanked the Iranian people for this humanitarian contribution. Well, we've reached the end of this news bulletin. You can find more news on our website in English, SyriaOnline.sy. Irado joins us next with Economy News. Stay with us.